In the middle of the Cold War, a time when fear shaped policy, and every nation believed the other was hiding something, the CIA launched one of the strangest operations in intelligence history. A project so bizarre, so unbelievable, that when it was finally revealed decades later, most people assumed it had to be satire. But it wasn't. It was real, it was expensive, and it was taken very, very seriously. This is the story of Acoustic Kitty. By the early 1960s, the CIA was running out of ways to spy on the Soviet Union. Embassies were fortified, agents were watched constantly, and every room worth listening to was protected by layers of counterintelligence. Traditional surveillance wasn't enough anymore. Microphones were being discovered, dead drops were compromised, and human intelligence was becoming riskier by the day. Inside the Directorate of Science and Technology, a small, highly classified team was told to think differently. Think beyond gadgets, beyond disguises, beyond anything the agency had ever attempted. They needed something subtle, something that could move freely, something that wouldn't trigger suspicion even if it walked right past a Soviet officer. And that's when someone proposed an idea that sounded more like science fiction than national security. A living cat, turned into a mobile listening device. The project was officially labeled Acoustic Kitty, a harmless name for a deeply classified operation that pushed the limits of technology, ethics, and common sense. Inside a controlled CIA laboratory, scientists began experimenting with miniature transmitters, tiny microphones, and custom-built batteries. This was the 1960s. Technology was bulky, fragile, and unreliable. But the agency pushed the limits anyway. Their goal was to implant the equipment inside a cat without changing its natural behavior. If the animal acted strangely, the mission would fail instantly. Blueprints showed wiring routed along the spine, a microphone hidden in the ear canal, and an antenna woven through the fur. It was a bizarre fusion of biology and espionage technology, years ahead of its time, and decades behind in ethics. But the real challenge wasn't the hardware. It was the cat. Training an animal to move on command, stay in position, and approach specific targets proved far more difficult than the CIA expected. Cats don't follow orders, they don't obey commands, and they certainly don't care about geopolitics. Still, the agency pushed forward. They built a custom surveillance van equipped with receivers and monitoring equipment. They tested the audio feed. They adjusted the signal strength. They spent months refining the process, trying to turn an unpredictable animal into a precision intelligence tool. Handlers worked with the cat daily. They tried food-based training, sound-based training, environmental conditioning, anything to make the animal behave predictably for just a few minutes at a time. And eventually, after countless tests, the CIA believed they were ready for a real-world mission. The first major field test took place near a location frequented by Soviet officials. The plan was simple. Release the cat, let it wander naturally, and capture whatever conversations it approached. Agents reviewed the operation one last time. Documents spread across the table, signals monitored, every piece of equipment checked and rechecked. This was the moment the entire project had been built for. The cat was released onto the sidewalk. For a brief moment, everything looked promising. It moved naturally, unaware of the technology it carried. The audio feed crackled to life. Agents leaned in, but the mission didn't unfold the way the CIA hoped. The cat became distracted. It wandered off course. It ignored the target area completely. And the audio feed became unstable. Years of development, millions of dollars, and countless hours of training, all undone by a single moment of unpredictability. The CIA concluded that controlling an animal in the field was simply too unreliable. The project was quietly shut down. No press release, no announcement, just a classified file, buried deep inside the archives. For decades, Acoustic Kitty remained hidden. Rumors circulated, whispers spread, but no one knew the truth. It wasn't until the early 2000s that heavily redacted documents finally surfaced, confirming that the operation had been real, and that the CIA had genuinely attempted to use a cat as a spy. Today, Acoustic Kitty stands as one of the strangest experiments in the history of American intelligence. A reminder of how far agencies were willing to go during the Cold War, and how bizarre some of their ideas truly were. And somewhere inside those declassified pages, the story of Acoustic Kitty still sits, half redacted, half forgotten, and completely unbelievable. If you want more stories buried in classified files, more operations the government hoped you'd never hear about, follow the page. There's a lot more hidden in the archives.